The Zorro was black and thick. It was scaring me at first because I saw it with my light on in the corner of the room, but I found out from my mom that I was actually seeing this one through the wall. It's actually in my stepbrother's closet. Even after knowing it wasn't in my room, I was horrified of whatever it was because I would always see the auras in the shapes of humans, but this one was just vague outlines. It looked like something pretending to be human. Hey y'all, welcome back. Today I have more of your own scary stories to read to you, and I am super excited. Some of these are on the longer side, so get cozy because you're going to be with me for quite a while. As always, if you have any stories that you would like for me to read, I will put the email in the description below, and please just put YouTube either in like the little description bar or just somewhere at the beginning so I know where to file them in my email and where to read them because they may end up on TikTok if you don't do that. Anyways, let's get into the story. So this person has several stories and I'm really excited. The first story my mom told me was of the man in the tree that I would see sometimes when we walked to our car, apparently sitting high in a cottonwood. I told her he was silly, but always exclaimed, "Mama, Mama, look at that man up in that tree." Then I would wave and giggle as I was loaded into my car seat. This was in Denver, Colorado. I grew up on the western slope of the Rocky Mountains, little mountain tucked down between Mount Callahan and the Colorado River. We had a large gully between us and the river. It's important because many of the stories I have are possibly related. We played down there a lot, and there were certain areas that we were unspokenly not going to, ever. Often we heard what we referred to as the Catmen. I love Catman stories. I have a friend over on TikTok that she encountered it in I believe it was Georgia, like maybe in Atlanta. She experienced a Catman and was like live documenting it on TikTok, and it is still one of the most terrifying stories that I've ever heard in my life. The Catman would scurry around and meow. It didn't sound like house cats. There was also a man that leaned up against the light pole by the skate park at night, pulling a cigar, and he wore a hat and never gave much movement. Maybe a head turn as you passed, but never felt threatening. Various little things and stories of people feeling watched or hunted and not deer, possible shape-shifting beings, and the list goes on and on. The first and most prominent thing I can remember was at our first trailer house. I would frequently have dreams of a large gray wolf peering through our window. Mind you, it was a trailer. Our bedroom window was high up, maybe 5 or 6 feet, and faced the gully. Think of wolf size like in the Twilight movies. Huge. I'd never felt necessarily threatened, but maybe always off-putting. Many years later, my mom would mention that my sister was also having these same reoccurring dreams, and we never knew that we were both having the same dreams until we were adults. Around the same age, my mom told me that one night she had made her way up to our room to check and make sure we were asleep. She entered the room and said that I shot straight up, eyes wide and bewildered. She said I was panicked and glancing around my room. I locked eyes with her and asked, "Mama, why is there blood all over?" No more than she could muster the nerve to question me, I rubbed my eyes, shook my head, and gave her a quick never mind before collapsing. She said that after that, she always brought my stepdad or older brother in to check on us. I'm sure there were other stories from that house, but I've blocked out a lot of memories from my childhood and would have to ask. Those are just the two that I remember. I was only in elementary school around that time. Fast forward to high school. My next most prominent memory, still in that same town but a different neighborhood, is at my ex's house. It was right across the street from the light pole ghost. Many things happened in this home. Everyone there was very into the paranormal and had EVP equipment, which I think is why the home was so paranormally active. Within my first month of meeting that family, I've seen orbs, a TV that would change channels or turn off, shadow figures, dogs chasing and cornering, growling at some invisible beings. There was a broken garden hoe, just the metal top part that apparently couldn't be moved or get rid of. I never witnessed personally, but supposedly it would return to its place by the water heater. I've had many stories with this family, as I went on a few ghost hunting trips with them. However, my current concern is whatever dark entity lurked in their house. As my relationship grew and the longer I was around, the occurrences would get worse. I will say that addiction played into it somehow, as my ex fell into a dark place and started partaking in worse and worse substances. As he got worse, so did the darkness. Important note, the majority of these were near the laundry room. My ex's room was also tucked against the laundry room, so it was the den and the TV that would go off and on, and the shadowy orbs. The back door was located in the laundry room, but broken, locked, sealed, and taped because of the draft. The boxes piled to the ceiling in front of it as a storage space. Well, one night, the family was gathered in the parents' room gaming, some sort of league thing. While everyone was busy, my ex and I went off across the house to his room for a while. He had eventually gotten up to go grab a drink or some food, and I was laying on my tummy playing a game on my phone. I hear footsteps. Not looking up, just assuming it was him returning. Sure enough, I felt the bed sink, as if he had crawled into bed with me, and crawled over to my side. I felt a hand rest on my opposite hip, drifting up my spine into my shoulder. Pausing my game, I went to roll around and look over to see nothing. The feeling of the hand was gone, and the bed felt light. I ran across the house to his parents' room, where he was, and explained to him what had just happened. As I'm frantically explaining, I feel this burning sensation on my arm. I could feel the anger. It was squeezing. I felt like I wasn't supposed to tell what had just happened. I gathered his mom's attention, and glancing downward, she grabbed her phone and took a picture of the handprint. I wish I had the picture, but I am no contact with that family now. The next day, we smudged the house, and it only seemed to get worse after that. Side note, a day later, I was actually shoved across my ex's parents' room. Not long after this, my mother was woken up one morning by the dogs freaking out. She kept trying to hush them, but eventually gave up and rolled out of bed to see what was going on. She left her room to the kitchen, and it all stopped. She went through the living room, checking the front door, but nothing. She figured she was already this far, might as well use the bathroom on that side of the house. Well, the dogs started going insane again, and she finished in the bathroom and walked into the living room. Silence again. But in the middle of the living room was a triangle made of forks. Quickly, she sealed it with salt, a bowl, and a rosary before returning to her room and researching what it was. I don't remember the conclusion she came to, but nothing really seemed to get much worse in that house. Fast forward, they go on vacation, and I offered to come take care of the dogs and cats, and one of the cats had recently had kittens. I was in my ex's room loving on the kittens, and I was sitting on the bed, my back against the wall, and this wall shared with the laundry room. I hear 3 knocks, feeling the vibrations through the wall. It wasn't loud, just 3 normal knocks. I didn't think about it. So used to being in this house, I just assumed someone was in there messing with me. I'd forgotten they were just not even there. Anywho, not thinking, I leaned my head back and gave another 3 taps. Then it hit me. It's just me. I locked the front door behind me as I entered. Windows are never open, and the laundry room door had been locked and quite literally sealed shut for years. I'm alone. No more than I went to scramble out of the bed, 3 more bangs. Not knocks this time, bangs. The kittens scatter, dogs are outside freaking out, and I scramble out of that house. I ran all the way home and got my sister to come back with me so I could put the dogs back inside. I never stayed in that house again, and I never slept one night over again. We broke up soon after, and I had very minimal experiences ever since. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only person who ever experienced that extent of aggression in the home. His mom had given some kind of name to my senses, but I don't remember what it was. I just know I've always been the one to inform someone that they have a ghost or a dark energy. I can usually give a brief description of what I feel the entity is or looks like. My last story, I was hunted by something on a back road in Oklahoma. It was the 4th of July, I think in 2018. My husband was working out of state and I had gone out of town to his friend's house for dinner and some small fireworks. An entirely normal night. I always get a little spooked out in the area. Too many stories and videos and whatnot obviously keep me on my toes at night. I know that can be anywhere, not just the mountains. Probably around 2 in the morning, I decided to head back into town and for some reason took a gravel road that I didn't normally take. Probably because it was the closest thing to get me to the highway with better lights. So I make it onto the gravel road, past the first property, and then all of a sudden I get this feeling of doom. Don't stop. Don't slow down. So I don't. At first I didn't change pace. Something had changed and everything felt quiet and still. My radio sound seemed to dull and I became hyper aware. I felt like it was next to me. I sped up from 35 to 40 and then 40 to 50. I felt like it was in the bed of my pickup. I refused to check my mirrors at all, and I remember I just kept thinking, feeling like if I slowed down or stopped, it would be the end. I managed to get myself back down to 40 to 45, a safer speed, but nothing less. This went on for what felt like several miles, and in all reality, it was probably only 5 to 10 minutes. I never saw anything, but I knew in my gut I was being chased, hunted, that I was prey. There's a stop sign a couple miles from the highway and thankfully flat ground so I could see. There was no headlights. So I blew through the intersection, and right as I passed that stop sign, something went normal. My heart rate steadied. I stopped shaking. My radio seemed too loud at that point. I made it home, and thankfully it doesn't seem as though anything followed, but I haven't driven out to that road ever since. When I go out to that friend's house, I still feel like I'm being watched. Not like it's close, and I almost never feel like I'm in danger, but I'm much more aware now of how I should respond if I ever encounter it again. I'm so glad you were okay after you sped away, because that could have went a very negative way. It sounds to me too like with the ex, I think maybe there had been some sort of generational darkness or even a curse maybe surrounding them, because they added in extra details that I didn't share because it just felt super personal. But I think there was something really dark around that whole family. Alright, let's get into another story. Before I start this, I will state that I have a history of hallucinating both audibly and visually. I've been pretty stressed out, which caused my hallucinations to go haywire. I was consistently seeing something in the corner of my eye, in dark places, and even reflective surfaces. I do believe in the paranormal, so my hallucinations usually base themselves on scary stories and fears, but this time it was different. It's important to note directly in front of the sink there are 2 mirrors, and to the far right there's a mirror in view. It was late and I was washing dishes while dealing with some paranoia and trying to ignore hallucinations, when suddenly I had gotten really cold and felt pressure on my shoulder, like someone had their hand there. I looked up and there was a woman behind me in the mirror. She had long dark hair and a white sundress of sorts. Before I could even analyze any more important details, she wasn't visible anymore, but I could still feel her hand on my shoulder. I ended up relaxing and no longer feeling paranoid after this interaction, but I really just chalked it up to being in my head. She showed up quite a few times, only ever when I was stressed and worrying about hallucinations, either showing clearly in a mirror or a shadowy figure. After a while, I told my parents about my hallucinations and specifically her. They told me it was in my head and that I'm just seeing things. Well, time passes and I haven't really seen her in my kitchen mirrors, only ever standing ominously in the mirror, to the right, just in the corner of the hallway. I was in my room while my parents were making dinner and I hear my mother yelp like she was frightened. Both my mother and father were startled and nervous, and when I asked what had happened, I got a simple, "We saw her too." Apparently, my parents had suddenly felt cold and my mom looked up and saw a shadowy figure behind my dad. He says he felt a hand on his shoulder and saw a figure in the mirror. I haven't seen her since my parents interacted with her. I don't know what she was or why she was here, for 5 to 6 years consistently showing herself to me. I'm hoping you might know something about what she may have been. So it could be a few things. Where you were already stressed out, it could have been a spirit that just kind of hopped in on that frequency. Could have been a spirit trying to help. Maybe they sensed bad energy and was trying to help you. But it could also have been a manifestation of your stress. Big emotions like stress, trauma, anger can manifest into entities. It's happened with me with trauma before, so it could have been that as well. That would make sense that she only showed up whenever you were very stressed. So I wouldn't worry too much about it unless she starts causing problems. Let's read another. I'm from Washington State and my mom has always been into the paranormal. There are times when we've used Ouija boards and done seances. I think I've always been clairvoyant, but I blocked it out for the middle portion of my life so far. Recently, I've been hallucinating. At least that's what I've been telling my friends. I've been seeing shadows and figures, usually of humans and birds. Well, anyways, I've started to research more into mimics, walkers, and things like that. More and more weird things have been happening in my life. The most notable thing is something that has been happening to me since I was a child, but it's happened a lot more recently. Things that I know have been sitting for years without falling or moving have suddenly begun falling over when I'm in the room alone. Sometimes when I'm trying to sleep, I'll hear something fall and have zero idea what it is and what it could be, and then I turn on a light and nothing has moved. I'm not necessarily scared of this, more so paranoid, but I'm wondering if you have any idea what it could be. Also, I think it's important to note that I've always had ghost friends since I was a kid. The first one was an old woman named Ella, and she would just stay in my closet. After I moved from that house, she followed me to the new house for a couple of months and then presumably went back to the first house. Since then, I've moved twice and I haven't met any more ghosts in either of those houses, despite strange things happening and no one clearing the house. Sorry if I'm jumping around a lot, but in the second house I lived in, the old one that Ella followed me to, just a couple months, I would see faces in the vents. I would be somewhat scared of them until I stopped seeing them. I think they only went away because my mom made a habit of clearing the house. There was also a shaman in the same house that would just linger outside my room. I never communicated with him, but I knew he was very nice. In that house, I would also have random visions from the perspective of a security cam in my hallway, and I would just see a ton of animals running around. We've never had security cams. At my mom's newest house in Colorado, I visited her in October, almost for the full month, and the whole time I was there, I had the worst paranoia of my life. I felt like someone was watching me the entire time and it didn't feel nice. Now I know she had spirits in her home because I've seen and interacted with one and tried to interact with others, but later found out why I can't. This one I was able to talk to was a little boy. I didn't catch his name, but I've always had a feeling that his name was Carl. Adding this detail after I looked up the history of the house, his name is Carl. He was really sweet and was curious about who I was, and when I visited, he was hiding behind my mirror for the first week before I was able to fully get in tune with my ability, and then he opened up to me. The only time I fully saw him, I've been able to see spirit auras, was when I was brushing my teeth. There's a mirror in the bathroom that you can see my room from, and he was peeking out of the room watching me. The other spirit, oh boy, the auras I see are always light and colorful, but still translucent. Not this one. This aura was black and thick. It was scaring me at first because I saw it with my light on in the corner of the room, but I found out from my mom that I was actually seeing this one through the wall. It's actually in my stepbrother's closet. Even after knowing it wasn't in my room, I was horrified of whatever it was because I would always see the auras in the shapes of humans, but this one was just vague outlines. It looked like something pretending to be human. After I saw that, I had the worst intrusive thoughts of my life. I won't go into detail, of course, but I couldn't get the thought of how I would eliminate someone and flee the state because I'd be leaving anyways. I never thought about something like that. Those thoughts were also accompanied by nightmares which featured a terrifying image of a woman. She had wiry hair and clumps missing. Her eyes were open wider than humanly possible, and so was her mouth. After I woke up, I couldn't move because I was petrified. After that, I'd see a man with that same woman's head detached from her body in his hand with a mask on. I guess I'm just wondering if you think anything happened to me currently is related to my past with ghosts or advice you may have. I'm definitely forgetting some details, but I'll end this here. Something I forgot to add, this was the second email, is last night I heard so clearly the sound of a cat jumping off of something, specifically the sound of paws hitting the hardwood flooring. I don't have a cat anymore, and as I'm typing this, I heard the sound of a cat meowing the same way my cat used to, but it wasn't her, if that makes sense. I think you are able to get in touch with things that linger around houses. Houses have past owners pass away, past owners maybe don't pass away in the house, but they were really attached to the house and maybe come back there. I think you're just able to get in touch with them, and they know that you can, so they come to you. And unfortunately, sometimes spirits do not show up in pleasant ways. I had a young woman show up to me. I did research after this occurrence happened, and I'm actually going to tell the full story on here soon. But anytime she would appear to me, her neck, it looked like it had been broken. Like it kind of like laid back like that. Her mouth would gape open and her eyes were huge. I did research, like I said, of like people passing away near me. There was an instance of a young woman with the same name. I'll let you know how I knew her name in that video. But there was an instance of a woman with the same name passing away in a car accident where her neck had been broken. So I think that was her. I think she just needed help moving on. She needed a friendly face. And spirits don't mean to scare you when they show up like that. They sometimes just show up in their final form, which I think is what happened with that woman with like chunks missing from her hair. Now, the dark aura energy just seems like a ball of negativity that lingered there. Cleansing the space probably would at least keep it at bay, if not get rid of it. It was probably attracted to the space because so many spirits resided in that home. But I think you definitely have a talent that you're gonna have to figure out how to, manage and use and things like that. All right, this video is getting a little long, so I'm gonna cap it at one more short story, and we're just gonna do 4 this week instead of 5. I live in an apartment complex and have been here for around 7 years. Most of my neighbors have said that they have experienced ghostly things, so I know it's not just us. But the lady in her house is nice and doesn't really do anything, but here recently we think someone else is here. It all started when I was in the bathroom washing my face. What is going on with the bathrooms in these stories? I'm never going back in the bathroom. I'm putting a pot in the side of my room. I'm not doing it ever again. I felt a heat on my back like someone standing behind me. I ran into my bedroom that I share with my sister and told her what happened. She asked me if I went down the hallway before I came in the room, and I told her no. She said right before I got to that room, she heard someone walking. My parents were asleep. And every so often after that, I'd feel a hot feeling on my back. One time we were playing hide and seek, and since our apartment is fairly small, we blindfolded ourselves. I was it, and I walked into a room we used for storage. I felt that someone was in the room, so I shut the door so I could hear if someone left. After a couple of minutes, I heard a giggle, and it sounded like my friend who was playing with us. So I said, if that's you, can you tell me, because I'm getting scared? And after a few minutes of no response, I took the blindfold off, and no one was in there. I ran out shaking. I know no one was in there because our floors are very squeaky, so I would have heard her walking. Plus, I would have heard the door open and close. That's terrifying. That reminds me of that hide and clap scene in The Conjuring. Do you guys remember that scene? Ooh, don't like it. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening, and I will catch you guys in a few days.